Oh, this next adventure is gonna be a mess. Oh, those little buggers, they're so vengeful.
I wish they would just. I wish they. Guys. Come on, guys, I can't be. I can't be talking like this. There are people watching.
Well, are you gonna tell the story? Yeah, and are you gonna tell it right?
I'll tell the story the way it's written, the way I remember it, okay?
Well.
Look, I promise you'll come out looking great. You'll come out looking really clever, okay? You're gonna come out looking like some serious contenders, some dangerous dudes. Is that alright?
Yeah, dangerous dudes. I like the sound of that.
Okay then, so can you fix the mic?
Yeah, we can fix it. Yeah, go ahead.
So I can... There it is. Hello, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to The Dungeon Minister. Thanks, guys. Alright, our heroes are returning from Hrothgar's Eyes. Just to recap the background, when the adventurers went to Hrothgar's Eyes, they stopped briefly at the keep on the Northern Sea. That keep was abandoned because the soldiers who had been stationed there from Kilmarnock had been withdrawn to go back to Kilmarnock to deal with the increasing trouble with lizard men in the capital and the villages and towns surrounding it. From the keep, they proceeded on to the caves of the Kobolds and Gnolls. Most of the Kobolds had abandoned the Gnolls, had just fled, taken off, didn't want any truck with them anymore. The Gnolls were largely on their own. They had a handful of Kobolds still there, but not many. The heroes cleared out those caves, defeated the Gnolls, and from Garrick, the leader of the Gnolls, in exchange for his life, they were given a map which would show them the way to Hrothgar's Eyes. They followed this map. On the way, they fought a werewolf who was armed with a magical axe, which Bob Johnny adopted as his own after they killed the werewolf. Then they fought the Yeti and nearly died. I mean, seriously, all four characters nearly died in that encounter. They went on from there to fight a hill giant, to fight some goblins, and eventually to come to Hrothgar's Eyes itself, a great fortress watchtower in the mountains where they battled with werewolves. Their wolves! And a gargoyle, and they were rewarded with Sigmund's bow, the dragon's bane, and finally were able to see from the watchtower that there was a dragon in the area. A dragon who had driven out goblins, the goblins in turn driving out the kobolds and the gnolls, and upsetting the whole balance of power in the north. While there, they battled and nearly defeated Evalio, chief of the werewolves. He escaped, however, and on their return journey home, he haunts their steps, his howls and laughter echoing through the canyons and valleys that they are traveling on their way home. On their journey, they travel through Highmark Pass, which they came through on the way north as well, but this time they discover that the ancient fortress which stood there, long, long ago, the ruins of which were obscured by the snow, that ancient fortress has been uncovered, and a secret hatch embedded in the center of the stone floor of the ancient fort, that stone hatch was opened, allowing the escape of the Bone Golem, which they fought in a heroic battle, barely defeating it, killing it dead. Deader than a pile of bones already was. In their victory, smashing the Bone Golem to pieces, they liberated the souls of those whose bodies had been used to create the monster in the first place. So now we are continuing the journey from Highmark Pass down to Honeywood. Honeywood will only be a brief stop, however, because the adventurers are pretty sure that Fofire has contracted lycanthropy. They're right, by the way. She has a month before it will become irreversible. She has maybe another week before the symptoms begin to show themselves in a sort of animalish behavior and, things like a wolf, like fleas and drooling and a desire to use fire hydrants. Anyhow, they have a little while yet, so they want to get down to Kilmarnock where there may be a cleric of a high enough level who can cure Fofire and potentially the others. They're not sure who contracted the disease and who didn't. I know, it's just faux fire, but they don't know. On they travel. They are heading down now, home, first to Honeywood and then on to Kilmarnock. But on their way, they're going to stop at those Gnoll and Kobold caves. And they're going to stop there because after they defeated the Gnolls, they buried all of that treasure, or most of the treasure. I think they took the jewels and maybe the platinum with them. But they left the gold, they left the silver, they left the copper. It was too much to lug up into the mountains and back. They left it there. They're going to dig it up and proceed down to the keep and then to Honeywood. So they figure, no problem. Just go into the caves, go to where we buried the treasure, dig it up, get out of there. Well... And a quick check-in just to remember, we are dealing with 2 elves, Bob Johnny and Fleetwood, both now 3rd level elves. We have Touchberry, the 4th level halfling, and Faux-Fire, the 5th level thief, and potentially soon to be werewolf. So if you have an encyclopedic memory for this sort of thing, you might remember that the caves of the Gnolls and Kobolds are in a cliff face. Not a huge thing, maybe 50, 60 feet tall tops. And it faces onto the western end of the Northern Sea. There's a bit of a beach in front of it where there was a fire pit and things like that. That cliff face is in one of the foothills of Marnock's Teeth, the mountains that are north of the Northern Sea. And off to the northern side of that cliff is the trail that they followed, which eventually became the route which took them to Hrothgar's Eyes. So when they're coming back, they're going to come back down that path. And so the mass of the cliff is here and the hill beyond it. And they're going to go into a bit of a valley, a little dip to the side of it, and come around here. As they approach, Fleetwood, my eldest boy, says, you know, we should really scout this out first. I mean, we've been gone for over a week now. It's 9 days, incidentally. So they decide, instead of following the trail down to the beach and around to the caves, they're going to go up to the top of the hill, to the edge of the cliff, and look over. Wise thought. So up they go. They have to battle through some scrubby brush here. It's not real thick woods, but they do have a few trees here and there, but largely underbrush kind of stuff. They battle through that to the cliff's edge, and they look over. They see nothing. Nothing seems to be disturbed. There's no footprints. There is snow here, incidentally, because although at this point it's late October, I want to say, the snow has been falling because this ice age is advancing and it's just becoming colder and colder. At any rate, they see nothing disturbing the snow down there. They don't see any evidence of anyone coming or going. What they don't know is that the kobolds have been coming and going, but they have been very careful to wipe out their footprints after they come and after they go. But they don't know that. And so they go back to the path, down to the beach, and head for the cave in which the treasure is buried. It was buried in the cave system which connects entrance B and entrance D on the sort of larger map of the area, and since the trail brings them down to the very bottom, they enter into cave B. Why not? In they go. The cave goes back for really quite a ways, 30, almost 40 feet, before it narrows down to a small passage that leads into a larger cavern room. As they enter this room, they immediately see something is up, because the 2 exits out of the room are blocked up, filled up with rocks, with rubble, packed tight, barely a gap in the walls, just a couple of little chinks, little openings, maybe 2-3 inches, a couple of them in each wall, blocked solid though with stones. They go to investigate the walls more closely. Are they mortared together? Are they just jammed in there, packed in there somehow? As they approach, as they get further into the room, suddenly there is an almighty crashing sound of rocks falling from the ceiling. They spin around to see that the entrance that they just walked through is being filled up with a rain of rubble. Huge rocks that had been suspended above are falling down into the passageway.
It's a trap!
Of course, it's a trap. Their first impulse is to rush back to that wall and start digging out. I mean, that's where they came from, that's where there's fresh air and freedom and everything else. They also don't remember these cave systems that well. They remember which one they came out of after burying the treasure. They don't know that one of these 2 entrances actually eventually leads back out, so it would be another viable escape route. At any rate, they begin digging. As they do so, as they begin to shift rocks out of the way, there's a whistling sound, and thwack! Faux Fire is hit in the leg with an arrow. Where did it come from? They whirl around looking for the enemy. They're the only ones in the cave. Just then, another arrow comes whistling out, glancing off of Touchberry's shield. It came out of one of the walls. Those little gaps left in the walls. That was no accident. That wasn't someone running out of stone to fill it up. No, they were left as murder holes. Now they have got a big problem. There's a lot of rock to shift before they can get out of here, and yet all the while someone is taking shots at them. It'll only be a matter of time before one of them is dead. What are they going to do? Most of them are going to go to work on the wall, Torek included, the dwarf who's come along with them. Bob Johnny, having the best armor class and being in full health, is going to go to that wall and see if he can either at least draw their fire or somehow find a way to deal with whoever is on the other side of that wall. He rushes up there, and as he's trying to figure out if he can see through the holes while not getting shot in the eye with an arrow, as he's doing that, clang! Something bounces off his armor from the other side. That other wall that was also stopped up also has holes in it, and someone is shooting at him from there. Where he is right now, he can be hit by both of them. So he backs off to a place where he is only visible from the one wall. He doesn't know what kind of angle those shafts are, those holes. He doesn't know what's behind them, but he's hoping that in that position he can still draw fire and not be hit from two angles at once. The second firing position cannot reach the entrance that his friends are attempting to dig out. However, it can be hit from the first wall. So he knows he has to make himself enough of a threat that they will shoot at him instead of his friends whose backs are turned and who are busy with other things. That's when he remembers. Bob Johnny, played by my youngest, he remembers magic missile never misses. As long as you can see your target, it will hit. So, he has to time this right. He has to time it when there's not going to be something flying out. So he watches one of the two holes, the one that seems the most likely for him to be able to shoot through. He watches that hole, and he approaches it, trying to dodge, trying to be wary, holding his shield and all that, but approaches it. And just after an arrow flies out, he runs up and looks through, and he can just make out a figure on the other side. He isn't sure. I tell him, it's dark in there, you can't tell for sure. It might be a kobold. At any rate, he sees something and casts, and the missile appears in the passage and launches straight into the figure on the other side, who screams and falls dead. Well, falls out of view. Bob Johnny can't see where it went to. It just was there and then thump, was gone. Immediately, something appears in that hole, a little stick, and there's a sound, just as Bob Johnny backs off, and it goes clang off his armor. He picks it up. It's a dart. A little wicked-looking dart with something dripping off the front of it. Bob Johnny calls out to his companions, "Watch out, they've got poison darts!" Just as more arrows hit him from the other side of the room. So he runs over to the other blocked passageway. There, the openings are a little less constricted. They're a little wider because they wanted a better field of shot from here because it doesn't quite reach that passageway. They wanted a better field of shot, so the openings are bigger. And as he approaches, and he gets hit once, first of all, on his way there, an arrow finally does make it through all that armor, and does get hit. But as he approaches and he gets right up in, he can see through, and he reaches his hand to the entrance and casts and shoots web into that area. Suddenly he hears complaining and snarling and growling from that side of the wall. He's caught someone. No more arrows come out of that wall for the moment, no darts or anything like that. However, while Bob Johnny is busy at the one wall, the enemy behind the other has free rein. Arrows go sailing across the room into the group working at the passage. Fleetwood is hit, Torek is hit, Touchberry is hit. None of these are huge problems. Torek is the most serious because he doesn't have that many hit points to begin with. But Fleetwood and Touchberry, they've got plenty of hit points. It's no big deal. It's not life-threatening or anything. But then, a dart comes flying across the room, and it strikes Faux Fire. The unlucky Faux Fire gets hit. Now, the dart does no damage. I mean, like, it's tiny, right? Not even a hit point. Not even a hit point's worth of damage. She pulls it out of her neck where it had embedded itself. And I say, roll a save versus poison. Uh-oh. Well, she makes her save. Just barely, by like 2 numbers, she makes her save. So I say, great. And I roll a 4-sided dice, and I say, take 3 hit points of damage. Okay, 3 hit points, that's no big deal. I can take 3 hit points of damage. No worries. Goes back to work. Next round, I roll again. Now take an additional 2 points of damage. And the round after that, now take 4 points of damage. Oh. This poison, if you succeed your saving throw, you don't die instantly, but you begin taking 1d4 per round. Now, fortunately, some of these rounds I'm rolling a 1, I'm rolling a 2, a couple of them I roll a 4. And although she has the most hit points in the group, being a 5th level, it's starting to chip away. And she's already taken some other damage from arrows and whatnot. She's starting to chip away, and they're starting to get nervous. They redouble their efforts on that wall while Bob Johnny decides, to heck with that wall, I'm going back to where they're shooting, first of all, to stop them from doing any more shooting, and I'm going to get those guys. So he begins tearing at that wall as they shoot at him. Now, one of the arrows gets through, a dart bounces off him and does nothing, an arrow bounces off and does nothing, but again, one of the arrows does get through, so he takes another 1d6, and I can roll like 4 or 5 points of damage. It was, not inconsiderable, but not going to stop him. He finally gets a big enough hole in that, he shoots his second magic missile, and down goes what is indeed a kobold. Now, with that enemy dead and the other one apparently neutralized in a web, they all turn their attention to the wall that Bob Johnny has just been attacking, and they tear it down. It doesn't take long. This one's not as heavy, it's not as serious. It was, purpose-built, and it wasn't that deep, because, of course, the attackers on the other side had to be able to access the holes. So it wasn't really huge, it wasn't really deep, it was just that, arrows and darts kept flying out of it. So they tear that down, and there they discover the bodies of 2 kobolds. Fofire keeps taking damage every round. On their bodies, however, they discover each of them has a vial. A small vial with a pinkish liquid in it. They look at each other. What is it? Right? Well, try tasting it. A little bit of taste. Okay, it's some sort of medicine. It's medicinal. Here, Fofire, take it. Fofire drinks it. It is indeed an antidote to the poison used on the darts. The kobolds carry it in case one of them pricks themselves on one of the darts. They don't want to die. So they have an antidote with them. So her descent in hit points is arrested, although at this point she's around like 9 or 10 or something like that. So she's getting down there. Considering that she had quite a few to start with, getting down there. Anyhow, they've now stopped the active attack. They still can't get out. And in fact, they're beginning to feel that the original entrance is hopeless. It's entirely blocked in. But they start to think, these 2 behind this wall, why would they be attacking from here if there was no way to escape? So they go in, and they can't remember. Again, they don't really remember the map that well. They go in here looking for any potential escape route. Well, they find one. There had been 3 kobolds behind this wall. When the first 2 died, the third decided it's all over and took off. So he could have stayed there and kept attacking, but he's, no, I'm out of here. They proceed into this tunnel, and remember, of course, this goes to the old supply room and eventually back outside. They also go into the passage that they had just entered, the passage marked B on the map, and they there discover the remnants of the devices which were used to bring down the ceiling of the thing, and they do there also discover the footprints of kobolds, who must have been watching and entered right behind them, set off the trap, and then fled. They go back down and now tear down the other wall. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And behind it, they discover the remnants of a web. The remnants, because someone has been here and cut out whoever had been trapped in its strands. By what they're seeing, where the web was cut, they figure there were 2 kobolds trapped in this web. Someone has cut them out, and taken a fair amount of time to do it as well. Now, they have been here before, and when they looked to the right-hand side, they saw another bunch of cots, of beds, another essentially barracks where the kobolds used to be stationed. And when they went through that time, They thought, never mind. We haven't found anything in any of the other bunks. We haven't found any treasures hidden behind. They took everything. We're not even going to look there. You may remember that that is where I had put some quantum centipedes, and I will visit those things upon my players eventually. But they never bothered to go in there. Because they never bothered to go in there, they also never found the secret passage. But now, as they look in, they can plainly see it. They shine their lanterns in and take a few steps in, and the light falls on a secret door that is left open. They go through it, and it leads to a winding, twisting staircase carved into the rock, winding and twisting all the way up to the top of the cliff, where they had been looking over just a little while ago. About 20 feet from where they had been, there is the exit from that secret door. And they could see in the snow footprints of a creature that took off into the forest. So they go back into the cave and they figure, okay, we'll go dig up our treasure, get that, we'll barricade ourselves in here, set a watch, we'll spend the night, and tomorrow we'll hoof it back to Honeywood. Okay, let's go get the treasure. No. No. One of the first things the Kobolds did after the adventurers took off for Hrothgar's eyes, one of the first things they did was dig up that treasure. They were watching. And they could tell, they could see the disturbed ground and all that kind of stuff. So they found it and they took it all. Except for, as I said, the gems and I think the platinum that the characters took with them. They had a little bit set aside and the scrolls and whatnot. But all the gold, all the silver, all the copper, no, none of it. They're not too worried about cash, though. I mean, when I play, when I'm the player, I'm all about the cash. I always want the money. I always want the jewels. I don't know what that says about me, frankly. They don't care about cash that much. They just want the XP, so they're fine. They do spend the night there. They barricade themselves in. They make sure that they're safe. They spend a relatively nervous night. Fofire, thankfully, heals a little bit. So does Torek, for that matter. And the next day, they proceed. And that adventure will prove how much play you can get out of the sentence, the characters return to Honeywood. Well, you couldn't play an entire 3-hour adventure based on that, could you?